So I am very aware that I've not been on YouTube for a while. I am a professional broadcast colorist. I've been busy, but I did see in the comments lots of nice people saying, where are you? Are you alive? Are you still doing YouTube? We miss you. So really kind comments. So I'm going to make this episode the best one that I possibly can for you to make up for that lost time. Now, what I've noticed in the last 6 months to a year, that there's a lot of new channels coming out, which is great for DaVinci Resolve. Some really great content out there, some fantastic tips, but it's become a little bit of a minefield. So what I thought I'd do in this episode is get a little bit back to basics, show you some real good pro solid grading techniques that aren't using advanced features. This is a just good solid episode. So let's take a look at the project. So this project is something I worked on a few years ago. I've got 1, 2, 3 shots all nicely balanced. And my first tip for you is to use a fixed node tree. Now, as you know, my node tree has been on YouTube for years. It's the same one still. I've slightly adapted it in certain situations if I need more nodes or less nodes, but a fixed node tree is the best way to keep you on track. Treat it like a map. So it's kind of follow the order in here. You don't necessarily use them in order, but it's like building blocks. So I've got balance, exposure, contrast, saturation. They're all clearly laid out so that when I'm working, especially if I'm under a bit of time stress, it reminds me what to do in what order. And this keeps my flow good. It keeps my image technically good. So a fixed node tree is really important. Now what I'm going to do is simplify this one. If I just go to my next version, and we're going to use this one throughout the rest of this episode. So all I've got on here is a color space transform and a color space transform in and out. I've got loads of episodes on this. I'll put links in the description. And I've just done 4 nodes: balance, exposure, contrast, saturation, and one called HSV Sat, which I'll explain soon. So this is my fixed node tree. So tip number 1, use a fixed node tree, even if it's just as simple as this. So tip number 2 is make sure you're using color management. It doesn't matter if it's automatic color management, ACEs, whether you're using CSTs, whether you're using CSTs and DRTs, make sure you're using color management. This is the best way of getting your camera source technically to the best starting point, ready to do your grade. So what I've got going on here is I've got a CST at the beginning and a CST at the end, as you've seen me do on many episodes. I'll put a link to my color space transform videos, which explain it really simply and easily. But if we just have a look what's going on here, if I go to my effects, we've got ARRI to DaVinci Wide Gamut. Then what we do is grade all these in DaVinci Wide Gamut color space. And then at the end, I'm coming down to Rec 709, Gamma 2.4 from DaVinci Wide Gamut. Now, there's many different ways you can bring that output for using DRTs. Again, I've got an episode on that, but you might want to work with the JP2499, which is a free resource available. And the one that I'm using in my workflow is I start off with a CST, taking the camera color space up to DaVinci Wide Gamut. And then on the end, I'm now working with DRT. So I use the Mononodes print, it's called. It's part of their Look Lab print range. And I'm using this as my way of coming from DaVinci Wide Gamut down to Rec 709. So it doesn't matter if you're using free resources, whether you're using the inbuilt tools in DaVinci Resolve, or whether you're using something like Mononodes, just make sure you've got good color management going on. So my next pro tip is if you want to use royalty-free music on any of your productions, make sure you're using the best. And I'm pleased to say that Audiio have very kindly sponsored this episode. So let's have a look at a few of the features. So I've been using Audiio Pro for years now on my YouTube videos and on my production work. So I'm in my Audiio Pro account. This is giving me unlimited access to thousands of high quality tracks made by real composers and real artists. None of this is AI generated. However, there are some fantastic AI tools in here to help you select the right track. So the first AI tool you have is Hands AI. This allows you to type in exactly what you're thinking and it will come up with suitable tracks from this huge catalogue. Now, if that's not good enough, what you can do is think of a song that you like but maybe is not royalty free, take a link from it from Spotify or YouTube, post that into Link Match AI and it will do the same thing. It will come up with tracks that are very similar. So not only do you get access to all this quality music, but you also get all the stems. So you can do your own mixes and there's a full sound effects library as well. There's also a handy app that's linked to your account, so you can listen to music on the move and just mark your favourites as you hear them. If you want to get access to Audiio Pro for just $59 for the first year, that's a saving of 70%. Click the link in the description, add the code, and you'll also be supporting my channel. Let's get back to the main video. So tip number 3 is balance, exposure and contrast. Make sure these are absolutely solid before you start moving on with the rest of your grade. You don't want to start doing things like color warper and magic mask. all this sort of stuff until you've got your balance, exposure and contrast absolutely solid. So let's have a look at that on the new node tree that we've built. So the first node I've got here, balance and exposure. So what are we exposing for? What are we balancing? So for this shot, I'm looking at skin tone. This is the main thing I'm looking at in this shot is his face. So where does that sit? We've got a waveform and a vector scope here. The tool that I use for that in the HDR is exposure here under global. And we can just start lifting that up. And through experience, I know where that should sit. It's going to sit somewhere around between sort of here and here for ideal in this room condition. There's no one number that I can give you that says this is perfect exposure. So it's really a case of having a bit of experience and looking at the image. Also bear in mind we need to get some contrast in here, and we're not balanced yet either. We're just working on the exposure. So you're kind of working on three things at once. There is a tool, however, from Mononodes called Utility, which I've done episodes on. I'll put a link to that in the description, which can aid me in getting this set right. So at my timeline level, not clip level, so timeline works across all the clips on your timeline. I've done a layer node and I've got the Mononodes utility, I've got skin balance and I've got exposure. So this is an exposure heat map. If I just switch that on, go to my effects here, what you get is an overlay on the image. So we can see here that perfect exposure is 0 here, and we've got good 0 perfect exposure on his skin tone here. And it's a little bit hotter on this side of his face. And if I just go here and split that vertically and move him over, that way you can see on your output, you see the real image on this side and you see the map overlay on the other side. But we can see here we've got a key light coming in on this side, so I'm expecting that to not sit at 0. I want it to be slightly over here. So this is good exposure. Now for balance, what we can do is if I switch this one off, I'm going to go to skin balance. This is all part of that utility pack, and there's a discount code in the description as well for Mononodes, but this is just a great way of doing it. Now what this is doing is looking at the skin tone line on your vector scope. So if you don't want to use utility, what we're doing is trying to get his skin tone to sit exactly on that skin tone line. Now obviously this is tainted now because we've got this overlay on. If I switch that off, this is the actual skin tone. So we can see here it's sitting just under that line. No problem with that. You can sit under, you can sit over, as long as you're consistent across your scene. Sitting right on it is a general guide as to where skin tone should sit. Let's put that balance back on. What it's doing is looking at skin tone, it's saying it's green, which is what I said, it's slightly under. So if I go back to my clip, I'm on my exposure here. I'm going to use my global tool here to just adjust that until it goes yellow. When it's yellow, that means it's sitting on the skin tone line. If I push further, we're going over the skin tone line. Now, so I'm going to set it somewhere about there. Now, why am I using this tool here? I've seen a lot of YouTubers doing where they take a node, they right click and set it to linear. Let me show you. So you right and click on here and you set that to be linear, gamma up here. And then they use the gain tool to do what's called linear gain. So that gives you really good balance, and it's a really good solid technique. But it's a little bit tricky to set up, and it's a little bit awkward if you're just starting out. And the HDR global tool actually does almost the same effect. So it's a really quick and easy way of just getting that balance, but using good techniques. It's much nicer than going to the primary wheel and using this offset tool. So this is now exposed and balanced correctly. So if I can go back to here, I'm going to switch this off. That's here, and there's our image, looking good. So we now need to put a bit of contrast in it. You could do contrast first and then go and do your balance and exposure if you like. It doesn't matter as long as these three things are done before you move forward. So let's have a look at the contrast. In the primary tool, you've got a contrast slider, which is great. Just be aware of the pivot points. You might want to work out what your middle gray should be set to on that. But what I do is I go to my primary wheels here and I use gain and offset to do my contrast. So watch what I'm doing. I'm looking at the waveform. I'm making sure that my bottom black level on my trace doesn't go below 0. And I'm going to have a look at my highlights. I don't need my highlights to hit the top. I just want to make sure that I've got good contrast. So let's just bring this down a bit. Let's increase our gain. Something like that. Now the thing to note with contrast is it's the most important part of your grade. When you're doing a scene match, if your contrast is out between shots, people will really notice it more than if your balance was out slightly. So your balance is a little bit more forgiving than contrast is, so make sure your contrast is absolutely solid. So my next tip for you is when you're using saturation is use one that doesn't increase brightness. So let me show you. If we go to our saturation node here, and if I go to my regular primary tool and increase saturation, just watch what's happening on the waveform down here. As I increase saturation, we're increasing brightness. I'm obviously going very extreme there, but I just want to show you what's happening. It gives you a very video digital look. It's not that pleasing to the eye. So use a better saturation. I'm going to show you a couple now. So let's reset that one. If you go to the HDR wheel, The saturation here works differently than it does in the primary tool. So we do global saturation down here, and if you look at the waveform, you see now that it doesn't increase the brightness as we increase saturation. In anything, it's actually bringing the luminance down a bit. So this gives you a much more pleasing saturation. Now, another good solid technique when you're using saturation is to use what's called HSV Sat. I'm just going to get rid of that saturation. This is why I've got a fourth node here, because I've actually changed the node's properties. If you right click and go to color space, I've changed it to be the HSV color model. This is a great color model for doing saturation. So it's hue saturation value, channels 1, 2, 3. So if we take off channels 1 and channel 3, we're just left with channel 2, which gives us saturation. And as we go to our gain in our primaries, you'll see that we get this really nice sort of filmic looking saturation. It's really great. Now, the other tool that you can use is color slice. This is a really good way of getting saturation in as well. So let me just get rid of that one for now. Let's reset that one. I don't want to do color slice on this one because we've only got a HSV color model, so it's going to look really quite funky. So let's go to our color slice. Let's just move these over a little bit. And you see up here, we've got saturation. So this is global saturation. Now, what you've got to be careful of here is it's pretty hard straight away. So let me just dial that in a little bit lighter. But you can see on the waveform that the waveform goes down as I'm increasing. So we're getting that nice density, kind of filmic saturation. But we're getting quite a lot of heavy saturation in his skin. So what we can do is go to the skin tone here, the skin vector, and just pull that back slightly. And that gives us a much more pleasing look. And then we could increase the density in the reds, for example. Just get his jumper looking a little bit more dense in there. Something like that. Now, the tool that I use for my saturation is another one from Mononodes. These tools work absolutely fantastic, by the way. You don't need to rush out and all buy Mononodes, but I just want to show you very fairly how I'm actually doing my saturation in 2026. So let's reset this one and let me go and find it. So it's in the effects, it's a DCTL, so I need the full version of Studio, remember, to run DCTLs, and it's called Mononodes and it's called Color Shift. So if I just come down here, there you see Color Shift, and it is the next one down. There's tons of these. And the one that I want is this one, saturation, density, and hue. Now in here, there is a global saturation button. I can do each individual vector, or I can go global. But what I like with this one, as I do it, it's a bit more subtle feeling than the color slice. But what I can do, this deep sat slider will bring back the original color of the face. So it looks at skin tone and just takes a bit of that global saturation out. So you get a really nice balance there. And if I just put a bit more density in his jumper, we get that looking really nice there. Let's just pull that density back a little bit more. So this is why I like using this tool. It's really solid. Let's have a look at that compared. So that is with the color slice. That is with the Mononodes. So you just see a little bit, it's a little bit richer here. Now I could go back, to be fair, and put a bit more density in here. It would probably help that. So let's just play these back for comparison. So these are all fantastic tools that give you a much more pleasing look than using the primary saturation tool. Tip number 5, don't key skin. If your skin tone is not looking correct, the worst thing you can do is key it and then start playing around with your gamma or your offset or whatever you use. Go back to the balance node, reset it using whatever tool you were using, whether that's gamma, whether you're using offset, HDR offset, whatever tool you're using, get it balanced correctly. And then if you need to, key other things. If you want to key this sofa to make it change, by all means do that, but it's better than keying skin tone. So let's have a look at how these look back on my original. Let's go and have a look at actually how balanced they are. So if I go to my skin balance here, what we can do, if I just put that back to not split vertically, oops, wrong one. I can go to Lightbox. This is a really cool trick. Go to Lightbox, right click, update my thumbnails. And I can see at a glance that the skin tones are all in the same region. So they either need to be all slightly green, all slightly magenta, or all sitting on the yellow as they're doing now. So I know that my scene is balanced. So if you want to see a more detailed explanation, literally node by node, how I grade my programs, there should be a video appearing somewhere around here. This one is to give you good, solid grading. So if you follow these techniques, you're on a good path to getting good, consistent grades. Just like to thank Audiio for sponsoring this episode. If you like this sort of content, think about subscribing, hit the like button. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next episode.